Chinese don't want to be like France or Great Britain or America, where in creating an empire, you bring the external proletariat into your internal domains. So if you look at London, Paris, New York, sometimes you wonder where the white people are. But in China, it's a very different feeling in Shanghai or Beijing or Guangzhou or Chongqing. They're homogeneous and they like being homogeneous. I mean, the whole of China, which has twice the population of Europe, has only one literature, one written language. A Chinese primary school student can recite the Analects from Confucius, written over 2,000 years ago, with little difficulty. This is how stable the civilization is.
当美国从中东撤退，当以色列发现没有美军撑腰扩张梦碎，当 DeepSeek 以开源撕开硅谷的封闭围墙，新加坡前外长杨荣文坐在镜头前，用文明纵深感告诉世界，我们正进入一个没有单一霸主的多极黄昏。他说，中国3000年来建墙是为了自保而非扩张，而今天的 AI 世界也将遵循同样的逻辑，不会有一个上帝般的系统控制一切。下面来看看他的精彩对话。
Alive. Is it a multipolar world that they are choosing? Which poles are they choosing in that sort of multipolar world? We're already seeing groupings happening like the Mecca Pact that just happened. Where do you see it all? Where do you see the chips falling in place?
Well, the US will remain a factor, but it will no longer be as dominant as it was in the past. And every region will have to find its own equilibrium with a US that is no longer as dominant. And they've got to live with a rising China and a rising India. So everywhere, countries are almost recalibrating, retriangulating. If you look at Israel, Zionism covers the entire spectrum. I think Zionism, which is more ambitious, which sees its future between the Euphrates and the Nile, I think that is no longer realistic. Because without American power, Zionism must have its limits. Zionism in its own form, in fact, has widespread support in the world, including in Singapore and India. But Zionism, which says there's never any room for a Palestinian state, I don't think that can endure. So somehow or other, we've got to go back to a two-state solution. But it's not easy for Israeli politics to go back to that position. And there must be a sense that American power will no longer be as reliable as in the past for them to come to this new position. So there will be a period of transition in the entire Middle East, which will take maybe years to unfold. And in this intervening period, there will be moments of anxiety. And all of us living further away, like India, like Singapore, we have to take into account the fact that we are entering a period of instability.
Let's come over here. Give me your outlook for nations like ASEAN, even for that matter, the ASEAN +6, the greater region, the greater alignments over there, where some countries are the greater poles over there, China, India, as you suggest. How would they look when there is an American retrenchment and a weakening of American power in the region?
Well, America may be weakening, but it is still a tremendous power. And I mean, the sheer inertia of the mass of a superpower will affect our lives for a very, very long time. So it's not as if you're talking about a peremptory withdrawal of American power. We're talking about a gradual phasing down.
A long sunset.
A long sunset. And contrasted to a rising China. So the result is in Southeast Asia, every country now seeing their future in China economically, but politically wanting to preserve its independence and diving into its own past for historical experiences about the way to handle a rising China. Because Southeast Asia as a region has seen China in its ascent and decline many times in its history. So it's not as if we are without historical instinct in handling this matter. So we in Singapore, we're lucky to be in ASEAN. I think ASEAN will remain a going concern, not out of love, but because we know that however big we are small compared to the major powers, and therefore we should be neutral, we should be omnidirectional in our relationships and friendships and maintain stability. So the key is US-China relations, which I think will be stable for the time being because there's the main issue is Taiwan, and the US is in no position to go to war with China over Taiwan. And China, I don't think will be adventurous. Then there's the India-China relationship, which will be very important right up to the end of the century. And that, I think, is gradually on the mend.
Yes.
So we are in a good part of the world.
No, so when you said a rising China for ASEAN nations and ASEAN plus 6 as well, see, I look at it the way that America was rather generous for the better part of the century with other powers to go along with it. China's rise is also testament to that the sole superpower there, America, let China grow and build these capabilities without being too coercive. Do you think China would be so magnanimous? Sitting in India, I have my doubts.
Well, I think the Chinese have a long history. They've always had paper, they record everything. And it's not possible in any conversation in China not to make repeated references to historical experiences. China is therefore quite predictable, and it is a conservative power because of its long recorded history. And its instincts are to maintain its homogeneity. The Chinese don't want to be like France or Great Britain or America, where in creating an empire, you bring the external proletariat into your internal domains. So if you look at London, Paris, New York, sometimes you wonder where the white people are. But in China, it's a very different feeling in Shanghai or Beijing or Guangzhou or Chongqing. They're homogeneous and they like being homogeneous. I mean, the whole of China, which has twice the population of Europe, has only one literature, one written language. A Chinese primary school student can recite the Analects from Confucius, written over 2,000 years ago, with little difficulty. This is how stable the civilization is. And the mentality is always to build walls around itself. You don't build walls to attack others. You build walls to maintain yourself. Sometimes when you go to China, and I go there very often, I must have been there 10 times in the last 1 year, you feel that they can get on with the rest of the world without the rest of the world. Sorry, they can get on with their lives without the rest of the world. So in India, I understand that there are anti-Chinese feelings, especially after Gao won. I don't think they will continue because historically, between India and China, there's been no history of antipathy. And people don't hate each other. They may dislike each other's governments or systems, but ordinary Chinese don't dislike Indians. Ordinary Indians don't like Chinese. All Chinese know that Buddha came from India, but they see him as Chinese, you know. They see Avalokiteshvara, they know he's Indian, but he's venerated everywhere in China as a Chinese.
But fundamentally, Mr. Yeo, what you were saying that they're very inward-looking, they're very homogeneous, they believe in a clean, linear way of thinking, right? In such a situation, are they okay with other powers in Asia rising at the same time as they are?
You know, China, even in its classical period, under the Tang Dynasty, they lived in a multipolar world. They've always accepted the reality of a multipolar world. They've always had more neighbors than any other major power on the planet. They've elaborated a very skillful statecraft to handle multiple problems on its borders at the same time. But do they have a wish to incorporate 1 million Indians or 1 million Russians or 1 million Southeast Asians into their domain? I doubt it. You know, in a crisis, the foreigners leave.
Yeah, COVID.
And then they come back. Then they leave again. So you find old Hindu communities in China in previous dynasties, they came, they left, they came back, they left again, following the cycles of Chinese history. No, I don't think China is an expansionist power. Of course, you have border problems. There are border problems with Russia, and they came to blows over it. It's a longer border than with India, but they've since cleaned it up. It's no longer an issue. One day, the border of India will also be cleaned up. So I think both sides will, in the end, take a practical approach.
Spoken like a true Singapore statesman, always making sure that India and China work together. How do you see, you have delineated your thoughts in a new Panchsheel 2.0 sort of thing. First of all, Mr. Your Panchsheel, it brings up PTSD memories of, the first Panchsheel, which eventually led to an India-China war of 62. What would this new age Panchsheel 2.0 look with greater India-China cooperation?
No, I won't say that Panchsheel led to the war. Panchsheel would have developed but for the war. And despite the war, both sides in their worldview have never departed from Panchsheel. I mean, I don't see India invading other countries. I don't see India wanting to impose Indianness onto other societies. Of course, India will have its influence. You will always have its aura, its mandala spreading well beyond India. So to China. And Southeast Asia, when the two mandalas overlap. And in their overlap, they created the Bandung Declaration.
Yes.
Which at its heart was Panchsheel. So it's a Western view which is very foreign to us, that you live, I die. I live, you must die. And the borders are hard. And that either my values prevail or your values prevail. I don't think you find that in Hinduism. You don't find that in Chinese philosophy. We can have multiple values and still be ourselves.
How do you see a Panchsheel 2.0 in this age of, AI and this great arms race over artificial intelligence? China is right at the cusp. I mean, its models either better than or as good as American closed models.
There's a time when the Americans felt so advanced in AI that no one could ever catch up. I remember what Sam Altman, OpenAI, said to Indian businessmen.
Don't make frontier lab.
India, don't waste your time. You can never catch up. Then China came up with DeepSeek, and China made it open source, which means that, hey, even Singapore can make use of large language models and retain our own confidentiality and data security, a certain degree of AI sovereignty. So I don't see one AI mega power in the world. I see a proliferation of AI everywhere. And sometimes it will grow exponentially, it will become viral. Then it meets countervailing power. So you remember just a couple of weeks ago, a model in OpenAI's sandbox escaped.
Yep.
And then pummeled Hugging Face with tens of thousands of questions. And Hugging Face tried to use American models to subdue this virus, But they could not because they were all under similar guardrails. And this virus has already escaped guardrails. So in the end, Hugging Face had to use a Chinese model to subdue this Frankenstein. In the same way, there'll be Frankensteins emanating from China, and we may need American models, or maybe in the future Indian models to subdue it. In a sense, it'd be like a biological war, where tumors may grow, epidemics may grow, but in the end they find their limits. Because intelligence in the biological world is distributed. I see the same thing happening in AI. I don't believe in the singularity of there being one godlike system which controls all of us. This is the current Silicon Valley God complex.
Yeah.
It is approaching hubris.
Tell me this. This is a perception that I feel, and it also stems from the way Chinese diplomacy used to happen for the last couple of decades. This debt trap diplomacy, where loans were given, and eventually some sort of sovereignty was given in lieu if loans weren't paid up on time. That's the worry with these open source models by China, where companies, if they use these open models by China, which are remarkably cheaper than American closed models, that companies that are using those open models will lose their alpha to these Chinese, and China will come up with competing companies like that. Is that perception valid?
No. In fact, that perception is being deliberately promoted as part of information warfare by the West against China. You are more likely to lose your alpha to a closed system like Anthropic or open AI than to a Chinese system, which by definition cannot control your alpha. And interestingly, this was what the CEO of Palantir, Alex Karp, has been saying. He said, you don't lose your alpha by relying on closed systems. You need to control your own application layer so that what data you don't want to share, you can keep, for which you will need open source. So it's the opposite. If India wants to keep its alpha, it needs to go open source. In the immediate period, it may have to rely on Chinese open source models, and I don't see anything wrong with that. But your objective must be eventually to have your own and to achieve a degree of AI sovereignty. You can't do that with American systems.
Mr. Yeo, tell me so with all this that you just delineated about the war, the AI war, it's not a war, it's a race, an arms race, let's put it that way. Are thinking, I don't know if they're talking as candidly as maybe you and I are, but what are they thinking when they see what America is doing right now with its hard power as well as its soft power? And how do you think they're framing their strategy for the next 10 years?
Actually, India-China relations were proceeding quite well many times, in many places, and always with utmost courtesy, and with the view that the world is big enough to accommodate both India and China and many other powers. It was only after Gaowan that relations suddenly took a sharp turning for the worse. And it was partly the result of maybe opportunism that, since America is against China, maybe we also turn against China, we ally of America, then India can gain many benefits. And America dangled this carrot before India. But since the Ukraine war broke out, and then India had this air battle with Pakistan, it's quite clear that each side calculates in its own self-interest that this romance is not a true romance, it's just an adult relationship. We are here, okay, but it's daylight, we are
exactly
going on with our own life, And India will stay true to Russia because Russia is an old friend. And the US has its own agenda in Europe and the Middle East. India shares some of them. India doesn't share all of them. So I see India now gradually retriangulating in order to have a more normal relationship with China. The Chinese are also understanding the dynamics involved, making it easier for this future to be brought forward. And I see step by step the pilgrimage to Kailash reopened, the 3 mountain passes just reopened for trade, more direct flights. In China, I see many Indian business people now. And when I go to India, so many questions to me about China. So I see the ice cracking.
I'm going to conclude by asking you a little forecasting, if you will. In the next 20 years and all, which powers do you see in the region really dominating? China, obviously, you've mentioned it, but do you see India, parts of ASEAN? What region, or American influence in the region? Where do you what power centers do you see shaping up?
Well, McKinsey does annual reports forecasting economic progress in the year 2050. And China will be the world's biggest economy. The second and third will be the US and India. It's not clear who will be at that time. The fourth will be Indonesia. And these are all demographics. So ASEAN will be an important region, but we will never be integrated like the European Union. But we'll have a loose integration and a loose unity, but good enough for our own purposes.
I'm glad you brought up Indonesia. That recently PM Modi went to Indonesia as well. Do you see both the countries positioned almost similarly right now?
No, both. I mean, Indonesia, the Bahasa Indonesia is full of Sanskrit words. And till today, the Mahabharata, Ramayana are played and replayed every day in different parts of Indonesia. So, of course, these are kindred civilizations. And in fact, President Prabowo wanted Prime Minister Modi to have a special relationship between Nalanda University and Jambi University, because in the 9th century, I think, the king of Srivijaya made an endowment to Nalanda University of some dozens of villages as an endowment for the sustenance of the monks. And this is all recorded in a copper plate, which is still in the Delhi Museum. So there is a desire to strengthen links between Indonesia and India, and indeed among all of us in ASEAN. You see, the more our relationship with China grows, the more our instinct to diversify is strengthened. The more we want America to be around, the more we want India to succeed. So that when we deal with China, we have alternatives. Otherwise, the Chinese will have too much influence on us.
You've been at the high table of diplomacy now for almost a decade when you were in your position as the foreign minister in Singapore. How did you see qualitative changes in the way India worked in the early 2000s, 2010 to now, India of now?
No, India needs a much bigger foreign ministry. It's got a very elite institution. The examinations to join are very difficult. So all of them are highly intelligent, but there are not enough of them. China, as I said earlier, is used to dealing with multiple problems at the same time in different directions. India inherited its independence from the Raj. Foreign policy was handled from London. So foreign policy from Delhi has a relatively short historical period of experience. It needs to be built up. And I know they've been trying, but the institutions are conservative. But I would here publicly call for a significant expansion of the Indian Foreign Ministry.
If Dr. Jaishankar is listening, heeds your advice. Mr. Yao, thank you so much for your time, and this was a great conversation, and I hope people like it.
Thank you.
杨荣文用历史本能拆解了3个迷思。第一个反差是扩张与保守的误判。西方总把中国视为扩张主义帝国，但杨荣文指出，中国文明的核心是建墙自保。从长城到今天的同质化社会，中国不想把外人纳入版图，反而希望没有世界也能过自己的日子。上海、北京的同质性与伦敦、巴黎、纽约的多元帝国景象截然不同。第二个反差在 AI 战场。当 OpenAI 的 Sam Altman 告诉印度别浪费时间追赶时， DeepSeek 以开源模型横空出世，不仅让各国保留数据主权，更撕开硅谷的傲慢。杨荣文爆出一个惊人细节，某次 OpenAI 沙盒中的 AI 病毒逃逸，美国模型束手无策，最终仅靠中国开源模型才将其驯服。这预示 AI 世界不会走向单一神性系统，而是像生物界一样分布式共存。第3个反差是中印关系。西方期待印度成为反华侨头堡，但杨荣文看到冰层正在碎裂，朝圣路线重开，山口贸易恢复，商界热络。他说，中印之间从未有过文明层面的敌意，万隆精神本就是两国文明圈重叠的产物。西方你死我活的硬边界思维，在亚洲柔性文明逻辑里行不通。杨荣文总结道，未来20年，亚洲将进入长期日落与昔日东升并存的过渡期。美国不会骤然消失，但惯性衰减；中国不会称霸，但存在感无处不在。东盟的智慧在于全向外交，不选边，在经济上拥抱中国，在政治上保持独立，同时欢迎印度和美国留在牌桌。这不是骑墙，这是小文明在面对巨兽时的古老生存本能。当世界从单极走向多极，最重要的不是谁当老大，而是谁能在不确定中保持平衡。